unauthorized procedure. Prepare to meet counsel in 3, 2, 1.
I found the perfect soil sample and planted the mighty seed. It's growing. I'd like to apply for an exit visa to go outside. If I could find the original soil, I could...
The outside is dead.
But the soil is alive.
You are not qualified to determine that. Forward your work to the science lab. Exit visa denied.
But I know it's alive. It has to be. Look.
Take your dream suppressants.
I have...
Well, I made a film called Pumzi in 2009, and it's a short film. And it's about Africa in the future, when everything is dead. It's 35 years after the water war, and everybody lives inside of a building. And Asha, the main character, finds some soil that she plants a seed in, and it starts to grow. So she has to escape the inside world to go outside to plant her seed.
So how did you come up with this idea?
I came up with the idea because I have, like most artists, I have something that really annoys me. So it came out as a result of something that really annoyed me. And what annoys me is that we pay for bottled water. And I know it's a small, insignificant thing, but I don't like that we pay for bottled water. I think water should be free. So it started from that idea, and then it evolved from that, and what kind of world we live in. And what kind of world will we be in the future, where all commodities, air, water, sunlight is sold to us. I chose that Asha, who is a central character, to be a woman because first, really, I really tend to write for myself first. So Asha is a very close part of myself. And it was easier for me to get under the skin of who Asha was going to be by writing about a woman. I also strongly believe in female lead characters. I think that the role of the woman is so great, and it does get more and more attention. There is more funding going towards female education and girl-child education, and I think that's beautiful. But to see a woman who's dynamic and strong and courageous and soft and still very womanly and very feminine is so, it makes me happy. And really that's why I like to write female characters. Pumzi is my 5th professional film, but it's been a long, hard process. Most times you make money from doing work with non-governmental organizations. You do documentaries for them and then you save that money. And when you have enough money, you stop working for them and you use that money to pay rent and write. And then that money runs out and then you look for another job, and it keeps on going on and on and on like that. So that's how you kind of make ends meet, you know? But film is very hard it's very hard for it to pay for itself in Kenya. And in Africa, really, because especially in Anglophile Africa, there isn't a history or a culture of filmmaking. And that's just beginning to change, because we can see on every other sphere of culture, be it music or literature, those are excelling. So it seems the next logical progression will be filmmaking. So we'll see what happens in the future. But there are small funds, including a fund called the Changamoto Fund that's run by the Go down in the KCDF, which help artists create the art that they'd like to make without imposing any issues that they need to attack, because so often in Africa, when you're making a film or when you're making a television series, it has to be issue driven so that you can get the funding. So you have to be writing about AIDS, or you have to be writing about female genital mutilation, or you have to be writing about something that the non-governmental organization is funding, and that's how you get your funds. And very rarely do you have creative leads. We've always been looked at as the other. We've always been the Maasai, who are very exotic, or the wildlife. So we've had a whole history of documentaries coming out, but never any stories told by ourselves or where we feature ourselves. And so it's really young and still growing. I wouldn't call it an industry yet, because I don't think like 10 filmmakers make an industry. I think it's something that's beginning to grow and it's beginning to blossom. But what we do have is a service industry. So there's many international people who come and use Kenya as a backdrop and use the Kenyans as extras, but never as central characters. It's very rare to have Kenyans as central characters in films. So I think that on all spheres, including the government, they're beginning to notice that. And they're beginning to say, well, why don't we do our own stories? Because not only is the international audience interested in it, but also the local audience has shown that they're very interested in stories that come out of the continent. And I think that there's many things that people have been trying to say and have been saying in many different ways. I mean, we can't not talk about Gore wa Thiong'o or Ben Okri or Wole Soyinka as storytellers. So even adapting any one of those books into a film gives you millions and millions and millions and millions of stories to tell. So I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface of what African cinema is. With the technological age and the way that we communicate, I think the world has become a lot smaller, and a lot smaller in many different ways, including the ability to disseminate information, the ability to disseminate stories. But there's also been an interest in Africa in smaller niches. So like the festival here in Stockholm, the Cine Africa Festival has had a focus on Africa for a long time. And also, coming from Kenya, I can't help but mention that Obama has helped our publicity enormously. Now people actually know that Kenya is a country, and people know that Africa is not a country, that there's many different countries within the continent. And so there is interest in it. But also, I think that stories have been heard from so many different parts of the world. And now people want to hear new stories and want to hear new voices. And Africa is one of those places that nobody had ever tried to discover before, as far as storytelling was concerned. So now we're looking for what's actually happening from Africa. The World Cup being in Africa has really helped that as well. So people are turning an eye to Africa and thinking, well, if they can hold a World Cup and the ancestors of the American president come from Africa, then maybe there is something there that we can explore. African cinema is really diverse. So we've had the people like Sembeni Usman, who have from a different generation, who have represented Africa the way they have known Africa to be, where there was a conflict between the modern and tradition. I am a different generation, so the conflict for me is not so much there. The conflict for me is living in a contemporary Africa and what that means, in a modern Africa and what that means. So, in one of the stories that I was telling, like Pumzi, telling a story about the future, for me was very accessible because I need to think about the future. I need to think about where my children will be living and how they'll be living. And they won't be living like the Jetsons. They'll be living in an Africa that is authentic to Africa, but in a futuristic Africa that is authentic to Africa. So I used elements of what is already happening to tell a story of how I think that the future may be. Hopefully not, because it's quite a dire story in Pumzi, but with the progression and the way things are, it might actually go that way. So it's almost a cautionary tale. In distribution, you literally have to fight your own fight. So on top of being your own director, your own writer, your own producer to a certain extent, you are your own distributor. And you go with your film to every shop and you negotiate a different price with every single shop just so that you can get your films made. And also there's been, because we haven't had a history of cinema in the same way that West Africa has had a history of cinema, and it's harder to convince the theaters themselves to even play Kenyan film. So you end up using social networking systems like Facebook or, or Twitter, just so you can get people in the seats. So you really have to be a more gung-ho person when you become an African filmmaker. You have to take on every aspect.
Okay. I think I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you. Very
Thank you.
impressive. Yeah.
Dream detected. Take your dreams present. Dream detected. Take your dreams present.
Computer kinetic energy, 0% pollution, 100% self-sustainable.
I found the perfect soil sample and planted the mighty seed. It's growing.
Soil sample.
The one you sent. The box with no delivery note.
I didn't send anything. Reported to security and move on.
This could mean there's life on the outside.
You are not qualified to determine that. Forward your work to the science lab.
I'd like to apply for an exit visa to go outside. If I could find the original soil, I could...
The outside is dead.
But the soil is alive.
Take your dreams present.
But I know it's alive. It has to.
You were compromised by your illness. You should have taken your medication.
I have been taking them.
I can't help you anymore.
What about the plan?